All right. Marhaba. Thank you for coming today to our panel. I'm Danielle from W Source. We're a venture builder. We're doing investments and also tech to market. And I will be moderating this panel. I also made the content. Let me introduce the panelists before we start. So we have an all-star panel here this morning. So please applaud. We have Sandy, CEO of Scroll. Loud applause. We have Alex, CEO of ZikiSync. We have Vincent, CEO of ZikiLink. I hope you don't mix. We have Louis, Chief Product of Starkware, please. And we have already applauded Anish, who is the CTO and Chief Science Officer of Panther. Let's kick it off. So ZK is our favorite subject. As we all know, ZK is spanning from zero-knowledge proof, which exists for, as I checked just a few minutes ago, I thought it was 30 years, but guys, next year, it's going to be 40 years. So I challenge you all to have a party next year to celebrate the ZKs together with Shafi and Silvio Michele and everybody else. So before we start, I wanted to ask Anish, who loves the educating part. By the way, we're missing 2 mics, guys. Do we have extra mics? Team coming. Okay, fine. So in the meantime, yes, thank you. So I wanted to ask Anish, because when we met, and we met a few years ago, we had the discussion because this is one of these technologies like AI and others that exist more than 30 years, right? And it's still not mature. So I was asking Anish, how come it's still not in use? So Anish, could you give us a little bit of a wrap-up of how it all developed and where we stand today, and from there we can take all the other subjects. Thank you.
Apologies again for a bit late. Somehow in my calendar it was misplaced by 45 minutes. I assumed this to be at 12:45 and not at 12.
We love you. We're happy to have you.
So the way I would describe this is like, initially as an idea, it is a paradigm shift. And when it became applicable, then there was a difference between an interactive one and a non-interactive one. Really, the non-interactive one really took off by like 2011. At that point in time, we still were using some elliptic curve primitives, which made it very, throughput was very limited. And that has been a large amount of improvement. Fry, Starkware guys are here, so changed the whole game quite a bit. Then there were like a whole bunch of other involvements, new improvements. And the most recent ones include both folding, as in like recursive schemes and lookup schemes, right? So effectively, what has happened is like if you were to look at the size of the proofs, historically, the time it took for us to actually do things, and the throughput we have, it has improved quite a bit. If you were somebody who has been looking at it from like 2013, like the real implementation in the Web3 space is more or less 2016 October, give or take a few weeks, right? It was the first real implementation that any of the L1s could actually have. Till now, if you look at it, you see significant improvement. Like, I would say, even though we are still there, if you're being skeptical, you could almost say our competition is the optimistic mechanisms versus ZK, right? So in that real question, the answer would be, if somebody were to provide us with an insurance that underwrites the risk for that and the cost of doing ZK, so one of the things I kind of missed here is like, if you're on any L1s, there's an amount of cost involved in doing ZK, because there's a bunch of computation. Typically, if you were to think about it, what do you call multiscalar multiplications and fast Fourier transforms, the number theoretic Fourier transforms. There have been a lot of changes. Different schemes have completely moved out FFTs, moved out other parts of it, lookup tables have come in, but overall, you still have a cost. The real, what I would call the real litmus test would be, can we actually have the throughput and the cost almost in line with the insurance cost you have for optimistic mechanisms? When that happens, I think we are in prime time.
All right, we'll come back to this later when we touch on challenges. Now, one of the premises of ZKs is scalability. And I wanted to ask you, Vincent, if I may, to give us a bit your position on scalability right now, what is happening right now, and what are you guys doing in the field?
Yeah, zero-knowledge proof, especially the ZK layer 2s, have made the promise to bring this scalability to Ethereum, and I think we're still very early today. And what we're doing, we're building a layer 3, which bring down further the cost per transaction, and it's an aggregation of liquidity layer and across different layer too. So we're trying to build an aggregator that could be very beneficial for certain types of application, for example, for lending, for trading purposes, and scalability. For us, we also have another platform which is application-specific zero-knowledge rollup, similar to what the Stackware has offered to DYDX, and then we have written the zero-knowledge circuits and optimized some certain opcodes, and also we have adopted the stated diff. We learned this from zkSync 2, and this could bring down the cost. And then the scalability today we're seeing in general, because we're not building like a general purpose layer 2, so I think it is going still early, and we expect to see this to be improved in the coming months and quarters, maybe years. I don't know, maybe. Yeah, I'm happy to learn from you guys what you think about when we could go there and to really get to be able to have these applications that can onboard a lot of users and be able to support the high performance applications.
Thank you. So the way I have structured a bit, that we will go over the main premises and the main offerings of ZK, and then we'll do another round. We will tackle the challenges, which will be scalability, cost, and everything else. So I would like to cover, so we have done scalability so far. The next item I wanted to cover today is identity management using zk's. And Sandy has kindly accepted to give us her inputs on where we stand on identity. Thank you. Switched on?
Hello, yes.
Yes, excellent.
Yeah, so I think there's been a lot of experimentations with on-chain identity management tools in the past, and I don't think there's been any that has been particularly successful, apart from maybe WorldCoin. And I think there is a future where like AI makes most people's work somewhat redundant, and on-chain identity becomes an important tool to kind of like aggregate your credentials and delegate resources in an automated way so that we can be free from the burden of work and just like relax on the beach, so to speak. And the way to get there, there are scalability blockers in between, like what Vincent was talking about, and there are kind of privacy or selective privacy features kind of in between, and then there are kind of a bunch of kind of moral issues and ethical issues, and how data could be stored in a safe way, and also how the whole entire UX and the whole asset management process can be moved on chain. So I think that is potentially a future that we're moving towards, and I think to get there, there are multiple parts of the components, and we're just at the very beginning of many explorations in this direction.
Can I add something to this?
Please.
So I just want to highlight two interesting areas of identity that we see being developed. One is direct cooperations with governments, where governments actually embrace blockchain tech and start putting identity credentials directly on chain. This is happening on zkSync with the Quark ID project. We're working with the government of Buenos Aires, where they have an app and they mint credentials like driving licenses and birth certificates and so on directly on zkSync, and you can access it from an app, and they are acceptable in the city of Buenos Aires.
I have to ask you if it's something that Javier Milei has started.
And yeah, since Milei is like
so it is
very
Milei's
innovative and libertarian, and like a very they are talking to them they are looking to expand it to all of Argentina and also to Colombia and Mexico and like larger region. So that's one way we see it, and we like this has happened in the past also in Switzerland. I'm pretty sure that here in Dubai the government is also very progressive, very open-minded to such things. But the other path is even more interesting. There is a bunch of applications being developed called the ZK KYC. The way it works is you install an app on your phone and you can tap your passport And there is an NFC chip on most biometric passports, and you can, and these chips can usually sign messages, and they have a unique ID and certificate from the government. And you can generate, like the app can generate a zero-knowledge proof that you are a national of a given country, and this country is not on the blacklist, and you are like 18 years old, et cetera, like some like facts about you, and then provide the proof of basically your humanity, your identity, and some facts about you without disclosing your actual identity.
That's amazing.
That's the amazing part about it is that you don't have to ask your government for permission, because these biometric passports are around for like 20 years. A lot of people have them, and basically governments cannot like say no, because you just scan it and you can use it for these things. And I think this is one very interesting area to explore, like how we can do permissionless innovation on blockchains, tapping into existing identity infrastructures from the real legal world.
Indeed. Thank you so much, Alex. That was very insightful. So you, Santi and Alex, are taking me directly to the next question, which is privacy. Now, the privacy is kind of tricky because I always thought that privacy is a bit of a premise of ZKPs, because it's actually what you have just shared, that it's MPC and all this, but you only share what you want to share, and you can retain what you don't want to retain, right? Yet, there are privacy protocols on Zcash, and here we have the gentleman on our panel who can tell us about it. So Anish, tell us please why you guys doing privacy on top, and I need to ask you to cover also the latest on Aztec's development. Thank you.
So I would put my hand up and say something that's kind of very relevant. ZK on its own doesn't really provide you with privacy. All the set of people who are participants of the whole thing gives you the privacy construct. So you have a privacy set in that sense. So ZK just allows you to prove all the things that's been said. It works. If you have a nation state with 10 people, you have 1 in 10 chances of actually figuring out who you are. And if you are flying out, and if you're 1 in 10, there's only possibly one person in an airport, so your privacy is completely and utterly gone. So the question to me was, why was I interested in privacy? You know, in general, the general construct of governance implies that we assume everybody has a right to express their opinion on who they are electing, and that's the basis of democracy. When we get onto blockchains, we have a strange situation. All the normal L1s allow all transactions to be public. I don't think anybody would be very keen to walk around with your wallet, which, you know, broadcast to everybody in every part of the world, every transaction that you have done, you know, in your whole life. So this to me was a real challenge, and this is the reason, like there's a second order effect to this. I should describe this, is this challenge of information arbitrage. If you have the ability to collect, I mean, now in the age of LLMs, this is really relevant. It requires 3 things. One is machines. Now it's H100s, the A100s, or the NVIDIA GPUs. It wasn't the case before, but that's where we are now. 2 is the data. So like if you have public data, then you know you have access to data. And 3 is a bit of a brain, meaning like somebody who has the ability to convert that. And the gradient for that has come down quite a bit. Like you know the latest set of models, the involvement from humans to do feature engineering has come down quite a bit. So what does it imply? The set of people like the Googles, Amazon, the FANGs in that sense, they have a real information arbitrage on you. They know what you're doing, especially if your financial data is all public. You know, they have a much better chance of actually recognizing what your next move is ahead of who you are. So to me, it's an unfair advantage place for all these people, right? So, you know, in the whole principle of decentralization and providing everybody with a fair chance, I think it's only fair that we look at the possibility of providing at least bounded privacy where you have compliance and you have these disclosures the same way that TradeFi has in dark pools to users of Web3. That's what I would say.
Thank you. Anything you can add on Aztec, if you know the latest development there?
Yeah, I mean, like, there have been a whole bunch of people who actually created privacy with ZK. Aztec is one of them, Zcash, Monero, the whole bunch of them, right? It's just that the regulatory situation has actually made people take hard choices. The hard choice is like, can you create something which truly complies. And even beyond that, there's this construct of being able to recognize funds being tainted. So if you have a mixer where multi-sheeter pool where you have something coming in and something going out, and if you have a split and join, which is like you can actually put some value and you can split it between people, making sure that you can actually keep track of the tainting, it's a really hard task. And then you have to really say, what do you want to really do? So some people made the choice that, we really don't want to take any regulatory risk, especially in certain countries, like UK, it's a very difficult one.
Thank you. So we covered two sides of the coin, privacy and governments embracing zcase. Now, there's one more subject I wanted to cover today, and that's non-financial products. And I have chosen the ZK OG Starkware, Luis, to help us on this.
Yeah, so when it comes to non-financial application, the main use case I see from ZK and mostly scaling is the ability for a couple of things. The one that is most interesting to me is on-chain gaming, and I always give this example of there is a couple of reasons why on-chain gaming needs ZK, and the main one is the fact that the reason why those builder wants to build on-chain games is because if you watch Ready Player One, the movie, there is something absolutely dystopian about it, which is the whole premise of the movie that who's gonna inherit everyone's playing a game all their life, and the movie starts with the death of the creator of the game. And there is a challenge in the game to know who's the first one to solve it will win the ownership of the company. So basically the whole world belongs to one person, and we have to hope that it's the right one, the nice one is going to take it over. And when you talk to every autonomous world guy and on-chain gaming guy, what they want is they want to create games that are going to survive the death of the creators, that are autonomous in the sense that they do no longer belong to the creators, but they belong to every participant. And so the reason why you need ZK in this kind of environment is that we hope for those games to be able to run on regular people's laptop. I should be able to run my own part of my game. I should be able to run my own part of the universe. And so this is like sort of the first non-financial application I'm seeing. Identity is obviously an obvious one, but we already touched it. And one of those that makes me the most excited. Now there is also about the annex primitive to financialization, such as things like storage proofs, trustless oracles. So on Starknet right now, or on the Starkware ecosystem, there is this team called Herodotus that is trying to prove the history of ETH to be able to extract arbitrary data point from a trustless source and provide that trust list to any other network associated with it. In the same line of thinking, we're seeing things like, I have a blank. So, but like this is, sorry about that.
It's okay.
So there is a bunch of places where ZK trustlessness is becoming big, and thing that I'm very excited about. The first step being obviously Autonomous World, and I think it's going to be the first start of a new type of internet where servers will just be running trustlessly.
Thank you. So we have covered some of the major topics, and from now we're going into the second round where we're going to be tackling the challenges. So one of the challenges known with zcase, and actually it's a little bit related also to you, Louis, but the question goes to someone else, the languages used. So the challenge is specific languages that need to be used, and on top of it, how do we onboard Web2 developers to zcase? I would like to ask Alex to give us his view.
Sure, and ZK is maturing as an industry, and just like the computing industry was maturing over decades, starting with people writing programs in machine codes on, like this cards with dotted holes in them, which were fed into these big frames, and then from there to assembly, and then from there to C, and like these low-level languages, and then progressing to higher level languages, and then to like specialized languages like JavaScript for web applications. Ultimately, the ideal world is where you write in a language which is specialized and designed for the application domain you're building for. Like if it's smart contracts, it should be a smart contract language and not something like ZK specific, right? Today, for better or worse, the lingua franca of smart contracts is Solidity. Like maybe it will change. Solidity is not the best language. I honestly hate it. There are like better approaches. Like I like Move's inspiration from Rust. I like actually like you could write smart contracts in Rust itself. Like there are ways to do it better. But for now, Solidity is the main language. And so like for us, it was a no-brainer that we have to support Solidity. The moment we could do this, on ZKVM, we did it. The very first ZKVM launched by ZK-Sync, like basically supports Solidity. You can take any contract and just deploy it. In the future, we should be able to support any languages for building privacy applications as well as building smart contracts. And I can predict by the end of this year, we'll see ZK infrastructure being extended to anything. We work on something like this. RISC-0 is working on this. SP1 is working on this. Like you will be able to just write Rust code, compile it, and generate zero-knowledge proofs for it.
Thank you, Alex. So another subject under challenges is fragmentation. So what are we doing with fragmentation, and what are the fragmentation standards? And here I wanted to ask you, Vincent, if you can help us.
Yeah, we actually have a little bit of experience with all these different layer 2s and different languages. With Cairo, we have a few developers that have contributed a little bit to the codes, and also with Solana, with Rust, and also with ZK Stack, and fragmentation of these languages and fragmentation of the technical standards, and also the developer tooling is actually a big challenge for developers. Some applications was want going multi-chain, and they're stopped. Most of the time they're frightened, and we were in conversation with a lot of developer teams that actually want to launch application, for example, using ZK Stack, and they want to run their own chain maybe, and maybe on Stacknet too. They have to make a choice. So first of all, they need to make a choice which chain they're prioritizing, and this market and the people are rushing, and so this choice is difficult most of the time. And this creates the fragmentation of liquidities, because you have to go one chain, you got to create a liquidity pool there, and then you need a faster bridge, or you need especially if you go onto an OP, and it's hard for you to really to be able to cope with something at the same time on a ZK chain. This is actually a very pressing issue that we're saying, and the people and the users are feeling the pain. And the developers are feeling the pain too, to have to make the choices and how to go to multi-chain multiple times and cope with with limited resources. We keep receiving interests, to help them to deploy or to be able to solve this problem for them, that to combine assets, liquidities. Of course, it's not always about the financial applications, but if you're doing non-financial applications, it's probably less of a problem at the moment. But from the user's point of view, having all those chains and the fragmented user experience is also painful. So they have to have gas tokens, and so we need account abstraction, and also we need chain abstraction. There are so many chains already, and there's going to be more, unfortunately, and there are so many rollups, and there probably will be more. And we need to have a unified standard somehow, or we need to have interoperability. But interoperability does not only mean bridge assets over. I don't see how this is happening in near future. So we're taking this approach somewhere in the middle, trying to bring these chains together, and we'll be in a unified layer, right? Layer 3. This is quite a unique approach, to be honest. I don't think the market is really noticing this yet, and be able to do this with zero-knowledge proofs. It's just trying to maintain the security, trying to to still be able to settle and inherit the security from Ethereum layer 1. And if some application wants to go further, they want to unify with us other layer 2s, there could be a little bit more of trust assumption using a third party like decentralized nodes of oracles or something to oversee the state's root synchronization across different On layer 2, the beautiful part is that we're able to do this with Ethereum layer 1, and then we'll be able to solve this problem. But in general, fragmentation is a real problem, and that we need to solve. I think all these layer 2s are great, amazing technology. But they're building their own ecosystem, right? So with their growing fast, we're seeing this challenge, for users and some application builders.
Thank you very much, Vincent. So one more subject I wanted to cover is voting. Sandy, could you take the voting on you?
Voting.
Yes.
Yeah, I think Web3 is quite unique in terms of different experimentations of levels of voting, but the running of blockchain it requires a very specific knowledge and domain expertise. So no one has really tried like direct voting. And when it comes to like Security Council, it's always kind of within a certain body of people who have been pre-vetted. And so I think there have been some experimentations with like delegates or stewards, whatever you want to call it. You can think of it as like a representative voting mechanism, but that only works for more generalizable topics. So I think, yeah, so the big decisions regarding like upgrades, design directions, and research, I don't think that part is really possible to be like super decentralized and voted on, at least for a very, very long time. Even in Ethereum, there are so many different experimentations, just like there are so many different experimentations of L2s. The main protocol design decisions are still, it's not centralized, but it's not fully decentralized, and it's not like voted upon just because the level of expertise required to participate in these conversations are very, very high. But I think the ecosystem as a whole evolves to decide, and the market as a whole decides what takes traction and what takes force. And I think this is very, very unique to our ecosystem.
Thank you. Luis, you want to add
I would
something?
just want to add to where ZK does help in the system of voting, because there is like the obvious question about direct democracy and the lethargy of the average voter. But there is also a reason why most of the on-chain governance today is just not done on-chain. It's just cost. Like, it's just goddamn expensive. Like, Aragon died out because it was $1 million per vote, a million gas per vote at the time in 2017. It was not just too expensive then. It became too expensive afterwards. And so we're seeing, at least in the context of snapshots, and Snapshot is a leading voting tool in the market, trying to offload the tallying, the enumeration of votes to the L2, and send back the proof to the result to L1. And this is what Snapshot has been doing on Starknet. And especially alongside the trustless bridges, trustless Oracle I was talking about with Herodotus, I'm expecting to see a lot more of those tools, not only on Starknet, everywhere, to emerge and to become the standard way for managing governance. Even if it doesn't involve everyone, at least manage the governance itself and guarantee on-chain voting.
Thank you. Well, we have one big challenge left, and I wonder if Alex wants to take it, the costs. Can you?
Sure. The costs of, well,
Take it to general, like whatever you know.
there are really good resources to compare the costs of rollups today. One is called Grow the Pie. The other is called gasfees.io. There used to be L2Bit.info, but it's a bit out of sync. And if you look at those, the ZK rollups like ZK Sync and Starknet are on top of the list. Like we are cheaper than basically than some of the optimistic rollups, right? And so and before AP for
A little shilling. Go ahead.
I mean, that's just fact. That's just fact.
I think the
We
question
think
is,
that works.
the question is
Go
how
ahead, go
cheap
ahead.
is cheap enough? Like, is there a state where it's just like, that's cheap enough, or it's kind of an endless scaling process to zero?
I think no, like it depends on who you ask. For the end users, there is some threshold under which psychologically it doesn't really matter. Like if payments are under 1 cent, whether it's 0.1 or 0.001, it doesn't really matter, right? For traders, massive difference between 0.001 and 0.0001. Massive difference, right? Because they can do a lot more higher frequency transactions, like if you think of high-frequency trading with like thousands of transactions per second, it matters to them, right? So like you will always want to lower the costs, and we will always be in this race. But for for me, like from my perspective, the mission of ZK Sync is to bring mass adoption to crypto, to onboard 1 billion people on blockchains and give them sovereignty. Specifically from this idea of freedom and empowering people to have the control of their assets, their lives in their hands, and increase their prosperity for more economic freedom. And for that, I think there is a threshold. Like under 1 cent, it's gonna do it. Like if we can scale it to 1 billion people, and we will be able to do it with Validiums and with the ecosystem of like interconnected ZK chains on ZK Sync and hopefully on other ecosystems as well.
So I agree with you 100%. I would argue, though, that while the existing use case can be covered with 1 cent transaction and transfer and so on, to me, and actually what I'm bullish on and very, very optimistic is on the app chain front is actually free transaction. And by free transaction, I mean sovereign environment where the app itself controls the whole environment and know that they can make money or they can make revenue outside the regular like those protection that the fee mechanism is. So for an exchange, for an example, an exchange cannot live when another book has fees. That is, no matter how you turn it, and no matter how you want to put it, an exchange where I have to pay to cancel a transaction cannot succeed. And you've seen that all across crypto forever. And funny enough, Starkware specifically has like quite an amazing PMF on Perps with StarkX and all our history around the project building, perpetual exchange on top of the tech stack. And the reason why they would choose Starkware and Starkware Tech is because they can do free transaction. They actually don't usually use our brand because that's not what they are trying to sell to their users. They're trying to provide self-custodian trading, and the only place they can get that is gas free. But where I disagree a tiny bit on the app chain thesis is the UX of it is nightmarish. And people don't think so much about it, but imagine you have like 1 million app chain tomorrow, which would be comparable to having 1 million server tomorrow, which is like quite normal. Like we have how many websites on the internet? Like probably like 1 billion, which probably is relating to 100 million servers worldwide, maybe like 1 million servers. I don't know how many servers are in the world, but probably a lot. If my discovery of my wallet requires me to go to every one of these chain servers, block expert to understand how much money I have, we are in a freaking mess. And so the current format of app chain, as we know it today, is something I don't believe in. I don't believe in the conduit model. I don't believe in launching your app chain the way we are doing it right now, which is a completely independent infrastructure. And actually, we're going to present soon, and something I worked on a new design where there is a lot more flexibility on the way you present assets and asset bridging, and how this operation can work in the long term.
Olga, I'm looking at you to see how much do I have left, because we want to do one last round. 5 minutes, okay, excellent. So as you have heard so far, there are many ways to get to Rome. Everyone here represents a different way, but all together, they agree on how it works. So one last round maybe, guys. What are your specific challenges right now? Where will you focus this year? I mean, try to make it sweet and short.
Sure. So I have to follow up something Luis said before, because that's part of the challenge
Go ahead.
we have as well. So he's alluding to this construct of UTXO versus accounting. So what effectively he's describing in my head is like, okay, having an accounting mechanism which is globally visible, and that applies for privacy as well. So for me, the challenge is something like what he described. Can I have a situation where the cost of actually doing discovery, so typical privacy mechanisms are UTXO based. So essentially there's a workload associated with how to find out how much whatever you have. And the other part of it is like, will the regulators of the world understand the value? Will they see parity in actually having the same level of privacy that we now have? Like in Europe, there's very clear description of what is, how much information you're allowed to give, and you have the right to be, forgotten, like a whole bunch of things. And when they come to the Web3 world, they seem to completely forget the fact that all the things they said, like literally 5 minutes ago, it doesn't seem to really hold for their argument about Web3. So I would love for that to be valid, and as everybody in this panel would probably be interested in having, cost and throughput and all those things, get into a steady state where, you could almost get to a place where you could have any transaction, and any transaction really makes sense.
Thank you.
So in terms of challenges, there is a lot of, we are in a bull market, right? Nothing new here. We all know that's why.
Maybe.
Maybe. I mean, I think we are. Are we? Are we? Okay, I guess we are. And I guess for all of our project, there is a lot of noise and a lot of very short-term move to be when a builder wants to build an app right now, the diversity of options depending on that timeline is gigantic. And bull market tends to favor short-term focus, which for most of our application, I will argue here, have the disadvantage of being more complex. Like, to be honest, it's more complex to build on any other system than, let's say, going on Blast. And so the biggest challenge for me, at least, is to convince the builder that, maybe it's already, that they should be building on a long-term time frame than they are currently right now.
Thanks, Sandy.
So my mom asked me, what can I do right now on chain that's fun? And my challenge for this year is to try and answer that question.
Oh, wow, that's nice. Alex.
Well, we're decentralizing ZK Sync. That's the priority.
Amazing. We love it.
Yeah, our challenge is, I totally agree with Luis to how to deal with the short-term choice that we were forced to do in this bull market, if we are, and a long-term thing. And our focus right now is to convince this top-tier developer community that this is good choice. So this solution can actually work long-term. We're still in that process.
Amazing. Thank you. So what we tried to do today was, on one hand, to educate the audience and give you as much information as possible on different approaches and what ZK can solve. On the other hand, we wanted also to highlight the current challenges and opportunities. So I hope we have done this. I thank our amazing speakers, all-star panel. Thank you, guys. 40 years ZKP. I challenge you next year.
Thank you, Daniel.
Thank
Thank
you,
you.
Questions?
Daniel.
Can we take some questions?
Do we have some questions? Wow.
Thank you for the great insights. My question is mainly to Alex. I just want to understand how confident we are on the multi-layer approach of scalability, like L2, it's regardless if it's optimistic rollup or zero knowledge rollup, and L3, compared to a monolithic approach, which we see on other chains like Solana. It's one is using, it's like you compare or saying that you need to fix the internet speed at 1 megabit per second, and then you need to iterate on the compression algorithms without scaling it. So monolithic blockchains, they are creating parallel execution just to scale the chain, where the multi-layer approach with L2 is trying to Merkleizing the data and then create more performance and more scalability. I just see two different narratives on the space, on the horizon, and I'm kind of from a user perspective confused. Which one is the direction?
Great question, and I have a very simple answer for this. Everything that alternative L1s can do, we can do on layer 2s, but not the other way around. If think about any property that they can bring there, optimistic parallelism, sure, we can do it on the rollups. Faster execution, faster confirmations, very fast consensus mechanism, sure, we can do it on rollups with the sequencers, decentralized sequencers in L2, the ZK Sync is working on this, other teams are working on this. Everything that is possible, new virtual machines, of course we can plug in new virtual machines. But you cannot have the properties that Ethereum has, which rollups inherit, this ultimate resilience and ultimate decentralization, and easily put them over on the alternative L1s. And that's the difference.
I would even give a specific case of this. Let's take Aptos and Sui. What their main innovation is Block STM. It's coming to production on Starknet in 3 months. So, you can, and that's maybe, I think Alex will agree with me, you can retrofit any sequencing innovation
Yes.
on a ZK rollup. But
Right.
retrofitting a ZK system on top of existing tech is an insane endeavor. And every time I'm reading a deck that say, I'm going to prove Solana using raise 0, I'm like, good luck.
Yeah.
May I make a tiny plug-in related? Today at 3 p.m., we're going to have here Eclipse that are doing Solana. And we're going to have Pontum that are doing Move. So I challenge you guys to join, whoever can, and the audience
Yeah.
to come back on this one. Because we're going to tackle it.
Ju-
and
ju-
Alex,
I just-
apparently not available, that would be really nice discussion. Go ahead, Luke.
I just want to say one thing, which is like, it's hard as, like, it's like right now in AI, the biggest issue is not so much, like there is GPUs, but even finding the guys who know how to make the right model that works is hard. ZK is the same thing. There is very few people in this planet that can make the innovation required to get to the speed that you want to sustain the throughput of, let's say, Solana. And I'm always skeptical. That's all I have to say so far of the new
Come
teams.
back at 3 o'clock. I need your input.
So I'm going to put my hand up and say something. So I'm full disclosure. I worked on 2 of the top 5 L1s. I worked on a scheme, which is a ZK scheme. My team designed the whole ZK protocol. Worked on AI, so worked on ethics of AI, XRisk. Done like ridiculous amounts of work in all these things. I see all the comments from everybody. I agree at a high level what he's saying is true. Given anything, it requires an amount of training, an amount of intellect, an amount of interest. It's a product of probabilities, smaller probabilities. It has a power law distribution. The total number of people in the world who could actually build a really, what I call scalable, not decentralized, distributed system, you could probably count in your 2 fingers, 2 hands, sorry, okay? And maybe in your toes at best. I've actually interviewed one of these guys for one of the L1s, okay? Going back a good few years ago. They tried to move them from what you call a Web 2 company, a Princeton PhD, worked in a Web 2 company. So all these guys there's a limited set of people. You can deploy it the way you want. It's the markets and the VCs who kind of dictate how this blame is going to be played. If the VCs were to come out and say tomorrow, if you use any of these hypes, we won't give you money, changes. If the market really says this is going to be really successful, absolutely the game changes. So this is the game being played for 2 sets of players. That's how I see it.
Scarcity. Thank you. We have one more question, I see.
Yeah, very quick question actually. So I was interested if you can elaborate more, any of you guys actually, don't care who answers this, but like the liquidity fragmentation problem, right? And how ZK could actually help solve this,
give
or
the
any
mic.
other technology, like in which direction we would be moving. Because yeah, we all know it's like a pain if you want to swap something on one chain, then you have to bridge and wait, and maybe you don't even have a direct bridge to that chain, so you have to like have an intermediate or whatever. How could we unify this into like one unified pool or something like that?
I'm going to start if you allow me. So I love the thing. The market calls liquidity fragmentation, I like to call that state fragmentation, because that's what it is. It's a question of state. Like, where do I store things? And so there is 2 aspects to this question. And then going back to the discovery problem. So for me, the bridging itself is not really the issue. We can do bridges. The real issue is how do I forget I have this asset somewhere. This is like weird. Okay, this is on record. I lost a non-zero amount of money on Bittrex because they went bankrupt. And I forgot I had like a non-zero amount of money there. Like it's just a fact of life. And that you will not see things. And so the fragmentation problem comes from is worsened by optimistic approach, because there is no way to sort of like create this sharding into a chain. ZK allow you, and I'm gonna, as I said, like I'm hinting to something I'm working on, to like a form of ZK sharding where the core information can remain on the L2 itself, like the money, how much IOU you own, how much asset you actually own on the chain, and at the same time, offloading the computation to an execution chart. And how you do that is very simple. I mean, you would just have an app that was running your own thing, and they would just take your transaction, batch it on their own, and apply the state diff. The money is still on L2. They're still running there. So this fragmentation is not so much, there is two fragmentation there. There is a state fragmentation and there is a synchronicity fragmentation. Can I do synchronous stuff between various apps? You can, up to a limit, there is always like limit to how much synchronicity you can get. But on the asynchronous approach, the state fragmentation is mostly about synchronicity, about discoverability in my opinion, and that's going to be solved very soon by ZK.
Vincent, do you want to add something?
Actually, I think we all have like different approaches to solve liquidity fragmentation, because this is one of the most painful problem right now for users. Anyone that is capable to add value here is able to capture a lot of value and and attract a lot of users for sure. There's Hyperbridge, and there's also Stacknet as a Madara to solve this problem, right? And also there's OP Superchain and Polygon CDK. People trying to solve this problem now with the different tech stacks. And so we're a little bit like more neutral, so we want to offer something that is tech stack agnostic, to be able to abstract across these different tech stacks. Well, the end game for Hyperchain, maybe CDK also probably will be able. I don't know how that works, but I need to learn more. The problem is that we're still not able to solve this to have synchronized the composable transactions across different chains. This is not something that we see happening, or we don't find a solution for that. What we're able to do is to have a layer that can aggregate as much as possible, and but this also depends on how much liquidity you could attract. Is actually not from the tech side. I think it is still limited. We only see this the best trade-off that we can find, and we at ZK-Link can find at the moment, is to build this unified layer to be able to tap two different layer 2s. But the challenge for that is the finality. It's not fast enough, so the user experience is still not great enough. But if our thesis is that in the future, if all the chains are ZK chains and all approved, and then finality is a lot faster than what it is today, then we could have a great user experience, or a lot better user experience. Then you could enter funds and exit a lot faster and settle those transactions, and it's a lot more friendly and secure for tradings.
Thank you very much. I see Luis is holding his passport, so I get a sense of urgency here. Thank you so much, guys, for coming. It was an amazing panel.
Thank you.
Thank you for the passion. I think the audience felt it.